before we plunge into April, I wanted to go back into the beginning experience. There's this fantasy idea where your film would have been in competition for the Palme d'Or. That didn't happen. However, serendipity did occur. You went to San Sebastian, you won 4 awards. The head of that jury ended up wanting to work with you, produce with you. He ended up working with your DP, so it all worked out in the end. But how did you ever curse at the film gods at some point for not allowing you that premiere in Cannes? And who knows which section it would have fell in, but I like to believe that it would have been competition. So
with beginning, it was really strange because like we finished the film, we were in Mexico, and then like there was like this huge discussion about what should we do because there was pandemic, and I wanted the film to be seen because I do believe that like with or without festival, with prizes or not, what's most important is to put the film out there. Like film needs to meet its audience. And I did not want to save it for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what would be wiser. Like maybe for a career, it's wiser to like, you know, plan differently maybe a bit. But for me, I don't know, film was there. So why not to show it?
Yeah.
And then I usually don't think too much about like what could have happened. Because for me, it's important that this happened, film exists, that's the most important part, and you move on. Because my job is to make films, like I need to move on because I have this like, the moment I finish the film, honestly.
It's out of your system.
Yes, I just want to make a new film. Like I start to think about a million different things immediately.
For April, you mentioned in a couple of interviews that the writing process was fairly straightforward. Perhaps is also the case for beginning, but how did the research phase, like spending time with the doctors and the patients, possibly inform you about the smaller details that, just a basic cinephile that doesn't know these worlds wouldn't necessarily know, like especially the warmth and connection found between the women, but also this idea of like how system and bureaucracy and a thinly veiled patriarchal overreach works for and against people. Like it informed you about proximity between systems and people. So I was curious about past just the writing stage. How did that research component? How did that the humanity and the contact? How did you grasp that? How did it inform you about the choices you wanted to make?
I think that there is so much that you cannot grasp, and there is so much regret for me, and I always want to go back and immediately make a new film there also, because especially like with this subject and being in this hospital, I could probably make several films there because it's this like a world on its own. And the very first day when we went to the clinic, to the maternity clinic, I witnessed this like really strange scene when a girl was brought in by her family because she was like not getting pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I knew immediately that she's underage because she looked very underage. And I inquired and everybody started to tell me that no, she's 18. And I understood that, okay, like of course like doctors know it, everybody knows it, that she's 15 actually. And she was 15, then I knew it later on. And I could see her coming back over time. Her family was bringing her back once in a couple of months to inquire why she's not getting pregnant.
My God.
And I have never heard her speak. She would just stand there. And that somehow became part of the film. But then there are all these other experiences and people, and I witnessed so many babies being born because I was allowed to attend for labor, and then I could see husbands who would be FaceTiming and showing babies but not really encountering with their wives. Like they would like totally have zero communication with their wives because what mattered was the baby. And of course like babies matter, but in that society women just don't matter at all. They're as good as like
second-class citizens.
Yeah. It's just like so heartbreaking, but then I don't know, there is like so much like I used to send them flowers because every time I would attend for labor, then I would just send flowers to these women. And the first like very heartbreaking thing was to see that like some of them told me that they never received flowers in their lives, like never. Nobody has ever sent them flowers, even like the basic thing like this. And how much of this can be, I think that for me at least, making films always shows me the limitations of a medium. Things that I cannot do or things that I don't have time. I feel like life is too short for making all the films that I would want to make. And this all comes from the people I have met through the research of my films also.
Yeah, step into the shoes of a person and you'll find.
Like how many years would I need? I would need like to make films for maybe next 50 years. And that's kind of like not possible.
That would make you a documentary filmmaker, and I want you in fiction. I believe it was during a Q&A for the New York Film Fest, you mentioned this idea of confrontation on how we should look at things, see things, and not always feel the need to feel seduced by an image. And I remember watching April, and I had so much glee and affection for use of a kitchen table scene since Ackerman's Jean Delmen was peeling potatoes. I really liked the presentation of what birth feels like here. What kind of conversations did you have about the framing, the seeing, and what we don't see in those two alluring shots? A shot from above, but also a long take during an abortion.
Thank you for this question. First of all, I think everybody knows that cinematographer who I work with, Arseniy, who I think he's a genius. And he's also my best friend and my closest collaborator and a huge inspiration for me. So we communicate every day. Like there is never that we just don't.
And between projects, you're still having dialogue, you're still having
He
conversations.
sends me Picasso's sketches, for example, now, because I'm being obsessed with certain like, images now, and like he's now getting into this as well. And then photographers and just things we just like take pictures on our own and just exchange. But also I read all the time and I send him passages from here and there, and then he also goes to read the same things. But then like we're very different personalities, very different from each other. In a way we just don't really agree very often. I remember that in a hospital, when I was the first one who went to start to see how women give birth. And after several months, Arseniy was there. And when I told him that he needs to see it as well, because otherwise it would not be possible to film. But there was also a choice, like, I mean, he needs to see, but if he doesn't want to see, I mean, then what can I do? And it took Arseniy some time to make this decision. It was not easy for him. And you're so overwhelmed in a moment that you don't really think about where would you put the camera. And after a lot of time, like maybe after 1 year, we just did not know where to put the camera. I went to the it's called Museum of Primal Arts in Paris. And I saw all the sculptures from all over the world, from like early civilizations of women, children, of femininity, maternity. And it all like dealt with pregnancy. And then I understood that I just needed to look from top, maybe, this, to really like focus on a body and to really be focused on physical experience of it and not emotional experience of it, to kind of like separate these two. But you see, again, like we never know in a moment, like it's the process. And then we started to, because this film is also shot mostly with one lens. There are only two places where we use another one. And in the beginning the same, the entire film is one lens. So when I start to narrow things down to this decision, Arseniy gets pretty pissed, honestly. His initial response is like, why are we doing this? Because there are all these like fantastic lenses we can explore. But for me, it's like, that distracts me. Like I want to somehow limit my tools also as a director. And precision helps me to focus on what's important, right? And like also eliminating. And that abortion scene, it was kind of immediately this, I don't know, again, like we were looking at paintings, and because there is some sort of like admiration for female body I just can't separate myself from, and I want this film to convey that, because for me this film is about being a woman actually, and what does it mean in your body as well, and I wanted to admire even in the most difficult moments.
Nina is such a fascinating character. She needs to belong to both worlds, this day and nocturnal, to protect herself, to detach herself, to isolate herself, possibly save herself. And the paradox here is that there's a lot of warmth and care that she has to give, and it coexists with this idea of sabotage or being punished for what society asks from her. How did it look like to work with your actress this time out? And what kind of space do you give to the actress to sort of like figure out this character? Because on paper, her motivations and her actions sort of like are counterintuitive, and they do conflict. And you could write a whole bunch of backstory for something like this, but I don't think it's appropriate. So how did the actress appropriate this character? How did she work with this character? And
You see, Iya, because I work with her so far like a lot.
yes,
She's a brilliant actress, and the brilliance of her is not just because she has been an actress all her life, since her childhood, but her brilliance is not in her technicality or how much she knows about acting, but it's about how much space she leaves. Like, she can become so empty that I don't know how she can do it, but she can offer just emptiness in moments, and it's almost scary for a director, because when I start to encounter those moments with her, I start to feel this thing that, oh my god, like, she really now challenges me as a director. Not like confronting me, not wanting to, but just like it's empty, and then you need to give it a meaning or like help her to get somewhere. And it's almost like a dangerous process, because she's very responsive emotionally, and she almost like she lives through those characters, and she was there in the hospital with me almost all the time. And once when we started to shoot, and even like in active pre-production, she arrived and she stayed. She never left for a day off or anything. She was just always there in the hospital, and it was like not the lightest of experiences for her. It was difficult for her, and I don't know, I don't like to talk too much, and she doesn't like to talk too much. We don't really talk that much with her. Like, that's the thing, because sometimes when she trusts me enormously, and that's another thing which can go into the like really wrong direction in terms of like as a director, sometimes you also like, you know, doubt yourself a lot, of course. But to me, it's like sometimes just looking at her means so much more than saying something to her or her talking to me and her being in a room. And I really also want to grasp this, her existence somehow, because she feels what the film talks about. She embodies that. So
the nonverbal here is so, like, her performance in nonverbal is just as outstanding.
Yeah, somehow, and going beyond it, that's something which is priceless. I think very few actors can offer that. I think I should say this. Like, it's such a pity that she, and I know that now she's gonna also be maybe doing other jobs, but I think she needs to be more actively invited to work outside of Georgia, because she's one of the most brilliant actors of our time, that's for sure. And I cannot offer her nearly something close to her talent, really. She's incredible.
Yeah, we don't need her in television comedies.
She has never done it, by the way.
Thank God. Last couple of questions. The soundscape here, breathing is existing and existing is living. I felt as if there was like whales, echolocation calls, thunder, children laughing. I just want you to comment on the challenges of joy and joys of the mixing process. How do you personally flex those muscles? You say that I know that you are, you're into images, and I remember following on some ad campaigns that you did. So you're very much an image-oriented person. But does this process allow you to flex new muscles? Are you very concrete when it comes to sound, or do you come in like earth or mud, and you can just plant a whole bunch of seeds and see what comes out?
It's very precise. I try a lot. I think I work with sound much more than with image in a way, because images come to me
it's a second sense
somehow.
Yeah.
And the sound for me is really something which is like an experience for me to be, it's not that tangible, like you need to grasp it, which means that, okay, I need to work. I re-record almost entire film. And for example, for Ia, for the main character, every breath that she makes in the film is edited. It's a bit, tiny bit separated. Always like we create a bit of like a gap. You don't grasp it when you like listen to it, but it does affect you, and that means so much for me. Like sound allows also for so much more participation from a director than people think usually. And I edit every single. I'm always there. They don't touch the sound of my film unless I'm not in the room. And for me, it's the fascinating. We do it for many months usually, and I hope that with the more films I make, I'll have more opportunities to work longer. And in that regard, Carlos Regadas is a huge inspiration, because he has this like incredible studio also, and he can obsess over sound. And I learned a lot from him, and I'm very grateful to him for that, because he was teaching me that, once you go to work with a sound, nobody knows where the sound is sourced for or how to create it. So you can really involve your imagination and start to rethink entire film. And we usually record everything. I just sit in the studio sometimes and I just do it like, okay, let's record this touch, and then like alter the touch that we recorded on set. Because I really want sound to be not only the tangible and physical experience in the film, but also to be bigger than just what you see, like to create the world which is unseen. And for me, cinema is about unseen and what we don't really see. And with children, for example, when the film opens, I just asked children to come to the studio. I didn't know what I would want to record in particular or for what, but I really asked producers to have this patience in the process, because I need to experiment with sound, and I need to and then children start to play, and then I ask them, oh, this game like from my childhood, can you do that? And they got into it like so fun, like they knew this game first of all, and suddenly I started to know much more about the main character, and it was happening in post-production.
That's fascinating.
But you need to allow for those things, and I hope that, for example, like cinema in the United States, which is more constrained in budgetary requirements, I hope that directors would have these possibilities more everywhere, because I think that I really believe that directors everywhere are people who can who have enormous fantasy, and I would want to see unexpected things be offered also.
It's important to experiment and play. This film was once going by the title of Historia, Those Who Find Me. How did you come up with the idea for the title for this film?
April. Because when I was watching the film which I made, I started to feel that I was feeling very humble somehow. And I was feeling very grateful for people who came to me and who made this. This film was possible not because of me, but mostly because of people who allowed me to be part of their lives. And it started to feel very intimate and very small in a way, because small in a good way, because it was distilled to the experience of single individual women in this film. And I understood that Historia, those were too big, those titles, and I was not interested. I wanted to have a title which is humble, and which means something for everybody who watch, or maybe sometimes it just means nothing, it's just a month in a calendar. But even that deceiving notion of meaning nothing was more interesting for me.
Of course.
To leave the space again for a viewer.
That's what I do. That's what I did with this title. I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about, the backdrop that you know very well. That backdrop is like, it has all the beauty and all the ugliness at the same time. So I like the idea of renewal. I like the idea of things dying. So you could bring your own ideas to what April is.
Yes, and the violence of birth and death, which is kind of like we are all going through this process, and like just being there and witnessing birth all like so much, and we witnessed very tragic things, other things. It just somehow makes you as a director to see your place. I mean, you're not as big or grandiose, and I don't want to be. I mean, this is very important for me. I want to know my place somehow as a director, and life in those places where I make films, it shows you.
I'll get one really quick last question out to you. I follow the trades like crazy. I saw your name mentioned with Emma Stone's production company. She's working with a lot of cool filmmakers, Lanthimos, Eisenberg. I don't want to necessarily know what the project's about. I don't want to necessarily know anything that could spoil the film, the possible film of what that might look like. But what are some themes that you're thinking about? And I know you come from Georgia, and there's a lot of political upheaval right now, and it's a very anti-woman time right now. So does perhaps the idea of stepping out of one film ecosystem allow you to be more politicized and to go in with more guns blazing?
Yeah, I think so. It's like at the moment I cannot make films in Georgia, and I don't think that it's going to be possible in any foreseeable future. I would endanger also too many people around me, and I understand that it's not the place for me to be a hero because it's just not possible. And I decided, but even before that, like I was already like thinking about this film because like I have this connection with, I really love United States because I became a person in this country because like, I was a teenager when I left Georgia and I came here. And this is a beautiful country, and I feel that like we were talking today that like it's almost like unexplored somehow because most of the films are made in same places. I would want to dream about America somehow, to get out from the urban landscapes and to go farther into the really like beauty of what this country can offer. And there are these like people who are almost never in films. And I would want to be able to work with them, and I also want to be maybe my film to be, I don't know.
You want to see you want to see the people that don't get seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also maybe I want my film to be a bit more universally seen somehow, or because like when the film is in Georgian language, somehow it creates so many obstacles, and I think that making a film in the English language kind of deceives people that it's more understandable or more people will go to see it. And I don't want to deceive anyone, but I would want to somehow lure more people in also to watch the film because I want my films to be seen by people. I'm just obsessed about
Eric
this.
from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.